G'day, how you going? In this video I will be painting a Chaos Legionnaire from the Eightscarred, one of the devout Khorne Daemonkin warbands of Chaos Space Marines. For this scheme I started with a black spray undercoat before using an old large brush and layering Berzerker red for 2 thin coats all over the red areas of the armour. This included the legs, arms, torso and helm, applying 2 to 3 thin coats to get a solid dark red colour, leaving the shoulder pauldrons, knee guards and power pack for now. I then used Asmodeus red from 2 thin coats and began glazing the highlights onto the raised areas of the armour. It did take a few coats to get the desired colour I was chasing, but keep it thin because you want that dark red colour to be the primary for the Eightscarred. So here you can see the difference between his left leg and right. Glazing kept that darker tone while still giving a nice hint of warmth to it. And you can be relatively selective with where you'd like to put this and how far to push it. Asmodeus red will only go so far no matter how many coats you give it before you have to go lighter red anyway. For shading I wanted to glaze it toward the recesses before using a solid line recess shade, and for this I used Amphora red from 2 thin coats again. So watering it down similar to before, I carefully guided it into the deeper lower areas of the plating before settling it into the recesses. After I was happy with the slight shade, I then used Doomdeath Black and Asmodeus Red and ran them into the recesses, switching between the two depending how dark I wanted the line. There's a lot of trim on Chaos Marines and I know it's canonically a headache, so if you don't really want to spend time doing this, I'd recommend just pushing that previous glaze shade a bit further and using that. Onto the highlighting, I used Sanguinine Scarlet and sort of glazed it, but maybe with less water than usual, but also treated it as a line highlight. Glazing this colour would have changed the overall tone from dark red to a light red with dark shade, and so I selectively chose extreme points where light would catch, or very raised areas that ran a thin line to catch the light. And with that completed the Eightscarred's dark red armour. For the black areas on the armour, I used Doomdeath Black from 2 thin coats. I also used it on any other areas that would be silver or brass later on. In hindsight, I would have preferred to layer this over the trim as well, but it was going to be brass anyway, and I thought limit the risk of hitting any of the red armour as much as possible. I will admit, looking back now, I would have much preferred to go over it with the black because the recesses had black mostly in there anyway, and it would have cleaned up the trim a lot more. The silver areas were done next, and I used AK Interactive Oily Steel. These areas are scattered all over the model, so it's up to you where you'd like it to be. I just followed the artwork really, which showed the areas on the backpack, strapping on the chest, and metal areas on the bolt gun. After a couple of coats, Black Templar was used to drastically reduce that bright shine, before then also washing with Nuln Oil to reduce a bit of that gloss look left by the contrast paint. AK Interactive Brass was used for the trim on these guys. I wanted to try this here because it quite literally says brass in both textbook and on the paint, so how could I go wrong? Well, this paint is straight gold honestly, which is great if you want gold, and brass isn't too different, but it just clashed with the overall darker tone of the armour way too much. I don't know, it just didn't look pale enough to me to be brass. So I had to dull it down with a few coats of Reikland Flesh Shade. Again, the colour was right, but the brightness was way too strong. So a couple of coats brought it back to a worn down deeper gold, which I did like in the end. And after about 3, I think, coats of Reikland Flesh Shade, I was happy again, but needed to still bring that brass feel to the colour, and so I used Pro Acryl's Light Bronze and began highlighting all the bolts and some of the sharper points on the trim, and this in person at least really paled out the trim, but still kept that deep darker shaded brass to match the rest of the model. I then used Vallejo Dark Grey on all the rubber or leather areas I found around the model, so between the legs and on the sidearm pouch and even the loin cloth on the front. For the pouch I did a few edge highlights of Payne's Grey from Pro Acryl, covering majority of the area with this colour, before applying random streaks of AK Interactive's Neutral Grey. Dark grey from AK Interactive was used on the loincloth around the edges before glazing over with Vallejo black to deepen the centre. For the bolter, the artwork showed a grey casing, which I thought was great. Always fun to deviate from the standard common straight black casing, and for this I started with a Mechanicus standard grey from Citadel, before washing it with Nuln oil. I then used Dawnstone from Citadel for a fine edge highlight and for the bolts on the casing. There were a couple of ornamental skulls around, like on the backpack and bolt gun, and for these I did a quick layer of burnt tin and washed with Agrax Earthshade. The Eightscarred were depicted with bright green eyes, so for this I prepped the area with white and ran striping scorpion green over the entire lens. The Eightscarred used this Khorne symbol, often displayed on their left shoulder guard as a squad marking. Each line making up their overall Khorne symbol are used as a number. I did it on the loincloth, but also on the shoulder guard with Hellspawn Red from Two Thin Coats. And that was it, a Chaos Space Marine from the Eightscarred Khorne Daemonkin Warband. Very easy scheme this, and I really like the idea of different alternative schemes for Khorne lovers but not World Eater fans. Thank you for sticking with me this far. I hope to see some comments with your thoughts down below, and please share any ideas or suggestions for my next video of warbands you'd like to see, and I'll happily oblige. Thank you again. Bye.